Hello, I'm the 10-minute English teacher. Let's get you exam ready. Today we're thinking about An Inspector Calls by JB Priestley, and I'm going to be providing you with a summary to Act 1. Before we move on, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are lots of things on the channel to help you to revise and lots more to come. Okay, so Act 1. Let's summarise that act now and make sure that we know all of the key events in that opening act of the play. In front of you are 8 key images, and each one corresponds to a significant moment in Act 1. If you know the play and you've read it already, you might want to pause here and think about what each one of those images might represent. Otherwise, you can move on with me now and I'll walk you through the play. By the end of the time that you have with me today, you should be able to explain what happens in Act 1 with reference to each one of those key images. Okay, so we start with the Birling household. That's where we are. The curtain rises and we're in their dining room. Edna, their maid, is replacing champagne glasses with port and a cigar box. So we know that they're a wealthy family who can afford to have a maid and also a cook, who is referenced later, serving them. The family are having a celebration, clearly have lots of money. Mr. and Mrs. Birling's daughter is marrying someone called Gerald Croft, the son of very wealthy business owners. So Mr. Birling, the father of Sheila, makes a toast. He should be talking about the fact that she's about to be happily married, but his speech quickly turns to business and how he might benefit if his company begins to work with Gerald's parents' company, Crofts Limited. His toast ends with him celebrating the possibility that they'll be able to partner with the Crofts for lower costs and higher prices, which would benefit them and not us, the audience. He then shares his views on life and society with the younger characters, Gerald and Sheila, and his son, Eric. And he says the idea of community and thinking about others is nonsense. Mr. Birling also says that the Titanic, which was at that time about to set sail, it's set in 1912, remember, he says that it's unsinkable, absolutely unsinkable. And because we know the Titanic did sink, a wonderful bit of dramatic irony here, we see Birling's views as flawed and short-sighted. The inspector then arrives just as Mr. Birling is talking about society and how people should only really care about their own affairs. There's a knock and the inspector introduces himself. So he's turned up to speak about a girl who has committed suicide, who's died in the infirmary. Mr. Birling tries to intimidate the inspector by stressing his influence importance. He mentions having been the Lord Mayor and reveals he plays golf with the Chief Constable. The inspector isn't fazed or impressed. I don't play golf, he says. So he's got no interest in playing games or in Mr. Birling's social class. And he turns up and interrupts Birling and doesn't show the level of respect that the family was showing to him as he was making his toast. So this is somebody who's only interested in justice. Birling then finds out about his involvement in the death of the girl. So he showed a photograph of her. He only sees that photograph. It isn't shared with the other family members. And he doesn't immediately recognise her. And the inspector reminds him that Eva Smith, who is the girl who's died, worked for him. Mr. Birling had sacked her for being involved in a strike for higher wages, but he doesn't regret his actions and calls her a wretched girl. And he can't see how he can be held responsible whatsoever for her death. Then we hear about Sheila's involvement. So she's shown a photo of the girl, which her family is shielded from seeing, and comes to realise that she had the girl sacked from a department store called Millward's simply for being in a foul mood on the day that she went to visit. Sheila leaves the room distressed and then returns, and she's got a different response to her father. So when she sees the photo, she leaves crying and then comes back and is definitely remorseful. Very different response to her father. And then we find out that Gerald knew her. So the inspector reveals that Eva Smith, after being sacked from Millward's, changed her name to Daisy Renton. At the moment Gerald hears that name, he says, "What?" revealing that he's had something to do with her too. The inspector leaves the room momentarily, leaving Sheila to speak with Gerald, and she asks about his relationship with the girl. So then it's time to confess. Gerald doesn't want to tell the inspector anything, but Sheila favours honesty and seems to realise the inspector seems to know all that he needs to know already. Act 1 ends with the inspector returning to the room to begin his questioning of Gerald, and we can foresee the inspector speaking to each member of the party in turn to reach the play's climax. So lots of rising action to come, leading up to a big climax once he's spoken to all the members of the family about their involvement with the girl. So we know that in Act 1, Sheila and Mr. Birling have had some sort of dealings with Eva Smith that have helped her on her way to her downfall, and we'll find out how Gerald, Mrs. Birling and Eric have been involved as the play continues. So you should now be able to look back on those images and understand exactly what takes place. Give yourself a little bit of time to write down all those key events and make sure that you know them confidently. Okay, check out the other videos on my channel. I'll continue to add content. Feel free to ask for something you'd like to see me cover in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share, and keep revising.